I am Teresa, and I'm currently working in London at Birkbeck University, covering many roles. And many of you might know me for different types of studies that are different from this one. But I hope that today I'm going to interest you by talking about neurodiversity and specifically neurodiversity within our very own research network of AIMS trials. So during this talk, I'm going to introduce the AIMS2 Trials Consortium for us all, and then share the objectives of the study that we carried out, the methodology that we used, and some of the results that we obtained, focusing on neurodiversity, the career level distribution, mental health predictors, and the limitations of the study. I'm going to conclude by reflecting on some future directions that I hope this work will inspire. So let's start with the AIMS2 Trials Consortium, of whom we are all part of. So AIMS2 Trials is actually an abbreviation for Autism Innovative Medicine Studies, 2 trials. And as many of you might know, this is the prosecution of a previous AIMS European Research Initiative. So this research network as an entity has been around for quite some time. At this point, and its main encompassing goal has always been to advance the understanding of autism and its biological basis. But this most recent iteration of AIMS was also concerned with developing more practical products as a consequence of improving our understanding of autism, such as interventions and treatments. Also, this consortium research network and project aim to improve the characteristics of studies that were pretty much the standard format in the 2010s. I've been in research for almost 10 years, but I still remember that at that time it was the norm of running autism studies with 15, 20 participants, which is still the norm in some countries and networks where there is less availability of funding. Now, AIMS2 Trials, of course, provided the funding and wanted to use it to set a different standard and implement large-scale studies, and using many different techniques that could improve the precision of what was measured and used to understand autism. So, for example, integrating genetics, neuroimaging, but also clinical assessments, and making many of the studies that were designed by researchers actually happening in clinics, for example. So AIMS2 Trials started officially in 2018, according to the website that is still officially out there. And on the website, I personally counted 239 employees and people who were involved at that time in creating AIMS2 Trials and bringing it to life. And this includes the principal investigators, the PIs, and various types of employees. Now, of course, lots has happened since 2018, not just the natural progression of this consortium, but also other global events. And it is possible that the number of people actually contributing to AIMS2 Trials has shrinked, has probably signaled by the number of attendees to the 2023 AIMS2 Trials General Assembly just the past year, which was 106. So when we started being interested in investigating the neurodiversity within this consortium, we kind of expected that the number of people who could constitute our sample size would be between these two figures. So in a way, we wanted to make it more specific and decided to focus on active contributors of AIMS2 Trials people who are still, at the time of when we send out this survey, coordinating studies, collecting data, receiving salary as a consequence, but also writing papers and analyzing data. So why did we want to assess neurodiversity in this network, and why were we interested in inclusion within that? Well, it is a notion of our time, a welcome notion and a very promising notion that individuals with diverse backgrounds and experiences improve the validity and applicability of research. They make, with their contribution, research outcomes more representative, and as a consequence, results and interventions become more generalizable. There are also ethical principles that inspire looking at this topic, because of course, a research network that is interested in improving the lives of autistic people should also be committed to inclusivity and to respect of the rights of all neurodivergent people, which might include also researchers who are neurodivergent, to contribute to build a more inclusive scientific community worldwide. And then this all in combination, thanks to diverse perspectives and very solid ethical principles, can then boost the innovation brought by networks such as AIMS2 trials. So the specific objective of this study was to investigate the presence of neurodivergent researchers among the active current contributors of the consortium. When I started to talk with Emily Jones, the PI at Birkbeck, about doing this study, we actually didn't know whether there were any neurodivergent researchers. So that was our first research questions that we wanted to look at. And investigating whether there are neurodivergent researchers was more or less for us equivalent to investigate whether perspectives of neurodivergent people are involved in the research process from various points of view, from design to implementation to interpretation. If not, that would mean there is a gap, a relevant gap in representation that would bring ethical considerations. At the same time, by looking at the presence of neurodivergent researchers, if there are any, this would be a way of recognizing the value of their lived experience. Of course, researchers who are part of this network have studied, sometimes for decades. They are highly educated people who bring experience and knowledge from many points of view. But in the case of neurodivergent researchers, their lived and first-hand knowledge of the subject should not go unnoticed and unrecognized. And starting from there, we could build a better supportive research environment that could make these individuals thrive. There starts to be quite an extended literature in workplace psychology showing that neurodivergent individuals bring many benefits to workplaces in general, especially if there is a research component to these workforces, because they do have very distinct cognitive styles and lived experience that taught them excellent problem-solving skills that are very useful when for your job, you do scientific inquiry. And you have to think and be creative and find deep solutions that are deep and reflective. And just to give you a taste of how these researchers might actually contribute, these neurodivergent researchers might be already contributing to this consortium and have been since the beginning. I want to share with you just a few comments that researchers who identified as neurodivergent in answering to this survey have have shared. So we also had a couple of, actually 2 or 3 open-ended questions at the end of the survey, and I picked some of their responses, which are, of course, completely anonymized in the next few slides. I just want to read them out to you because I think they speak for themselves. So these are some of the comments I picked to the responses, comments to the question, what do you perceive to be the goal of your research within AIMS2 trials? Understanding the autistic experience of life, reality, its behavioral scaffolding, and neural underpinning. To contribute to diversity of opinion within a biomedical research context. Help to improve the well-being of autistic people through understanding neurobiological mechanism. Improve autistic lives. Decolonialize science. More clarity on how better inclusion can be reached in society, better treatments for those who need it, more understanding for all sub-entities. Make more cohesive cooperation between autistic community and autism researchers. Also, move towards more inclusion of autistic individuals in design of studies, outcomes, and so on. There is still a huge gap. And then these are a few others responses to another question. What do you think is the single most important goal for future autism research? To bring awareness to autism and help autistic people, overcoming the pathologization of autism, achieving equitable recognition of research priorities across all stakeholder groups and corresponding parity of funding. To include autistic people in the research process itself. Autism research requires genuine co-production. However, I do think that there is also a need for basic science autism research. It is critical to find a better balance between these two. Help to improve the well-being of autistic people through understanding neurobiological mechanisms. These are just few of the responses. In the interest of time, of course, I cannot share all of them. Let me just remind you that these are responses from neurodivergent researchers. Let's go to the methodology that we use for this study. We used an in-house built questionnaire. We designed the multiple choice and open-ended questions ourselves to investigate neurodiversity and various other variables. And we sent out this questionnaire survey to researchers and staff members via the AIMS2 Trials newsletter in January 2022, sending various reminders, including the link and the invitation to complete the survey. Explicitly asked that those who completed are researchers who contribute to designing, running, analyzing EU AIMS2 Trials studies. And we also specified that we invited both clinical and research staff to complete it, from professors to interns. This is an overview of the demographics that we captured with the survey. We obtained 124 complete respondents, meaning these are the people who opened the questionnaire, completed the consent form, went through all the questions and arrived to the final screen where they had to press submit. So these are kind of it's the number of people who more consciously kind of really wanted to complete the entire questionnaire. The average age of this cohort was 38 years old, more or less, with a range from 20 to 70. And as you can see in this bigger pie chart here, we included researchers at different career levels, with a majority of researchers identifying as early career researchers, followed by more senior positions such as lecturer, reader, professor, and director, clinicians, and then admin and other. This smaller pie chart is the career level breakdown from 2018 that I derived from the AIMS2 Trials website. As you can notice from here, the clinician and admin plus other demographics quite overlap. but there seems to be more early career researchers among our respondents compared to this figure, something I'm going to talk about more at the end. Then the majority of respondents identified as women, followed by men, and then there were few respondents identifying as non-binary or other identities. This is the comparison with the 2018 breakdown, where again there is a majority female, but to a lesser extent. However, from the most recent annual report, it turns out that the male to female ratio is a little bit more unequal in the early career level compared to the senior. So this type of relationship here might be due that the majority of respondents to our survey are early career researchers. I'm going to come back to this at the end of the presentation. And then let's go to the results. So these are the percentage for each response to specific questions that investigated neurodiversity. And as I said at the beginning, these are complete respondents, so they do not include missing values. So to the question, are you autistic? 4% answered, yes, I received a formal diagnosis. 4% answered, there is a high chance that I am, and I am undergoing the diagnostic process. And then there is a 15% that answered, I think I am or might be, but I never entered the diagnostic process. And let me just highlight that this is the actual wording of the answers and of the question. And then there is the neurotypical majority. Another relevant question for neurodiversity is asking, is someone in your family, including your partner, children, autistic? 19% answered yes. 16%, maybe, I'm not sure. Then finally, do you have another neurodevelopmental condition? And here we provided 3 examples: ADHD, dyslexia, and dyspraxia. 16% answered yes, 10% maybe, I'm not sure, 74% no. So this is in terms of neurodiversity representation, like crude percentages on the total of respondents. But as I said, we measured also other variables with this survey that pertained to the career level, the professional category these people were distributed in. So we were also interested in the intersection, for example, between neurodiversity and career level. In that case, we didn't just want to report percentages, because any observed differences might be due to chance or to underlying factors. In that case, the relationship would be systematic. So to investigate this aspect, we ran a statistical test that is called the chi-square test of association between neurodivergent status, so whether someone is autistic or not, diagnosed or self-diagnosed, and the professional category they recognize themselves in. And the chi-square test of association is able to detect whether a subcategory is over or underrepresented somewhere in this relationship. And while it cannot say anything about the causal relationship, of course, it cannot say the cause of anything that it might found, it may alert about potential disparities and barriers, and this is an evidence that can guide then targeted efforts in case a disparity is detected. Second, we also ask questions about the mental health of the researchers involved in AIMS trials, and we wanted to understand which factors were significant predictors of the mental health status of the respondents. To do that, we employed regression analysis, which is a statistical test that allows to enter many variables as predictors. So we entered neuroidentity, gender, age, and many others related to the socioeconomic status of respondents. And this would allow us to understand the independent contribution of different variables to mental health, as well as quantifying the strength of this association. And this, again, is an evidence that can help inform support that is going to happen in the future, and also to track change if measures are implemented, because a similar survey to this could be run again, a similar analysis could be run on new responses to see whether there has been any improvement. So let's go to the results. First, chi-square test of association between neurodivergent status, so the responses to the question, are you autistic? And the career level declared by the respondent, the one that they recognize they pertain to. So there was, according to the chi-square, a significant association between professional category and being autistic. So the response given to this question was significantly associated to the response given to this other question, what career level are you in? And this was not due to chance, according to the chi-square test. But as you can see here, there are many different levels. So what is driving this association? To understand that, we looked at the expected frequencies, which one was above one, which meant overrepresentation, and the significantly overrepresented expected frequency in this pool was the one of self-detected autistic in the early career level, meaning that they were overrepresented here and not as represented in the other categories, including the senior ones. Going to the regression investigated whether any of the factors that we included significantly predicted, influenced the odds ratio. The odds ratio are a measure of likelihood of having a mental health diagnosis. This odds ratio were significantly increased by being neurodivergent, which in this case where this information was pooled from several questions. So in this category, neurodivergent, we put people diagnosed with autism, self-identified, but also the people who declare to have or being diagnosed with another neurodevelopmental condition. And these were compared to people who declared to have none of it, and the odds ratio were higher. No other predictor turned out to be significant in this analysis. So let's go into the discussion. So the first point I want to bring to your attention for the discussion is the influence of intersectionality on this topic. I shared with you with these results that I showed the association between career levels, neurodiversity, and then mental health, etc. But as I said, we collected many other variables, including gender. Career level turned out to also be significantly associated with gender, with females being overrepresented in early career roles. And mental health was almost significantly predicted by gender too, with a higher odds ratio of a mental health diagnosis in women. While this sample didn't have the power to really analyze the intersection between these different factors, these insights give preliminary evidence to the fact that people might experience overlapping forms of discrimination, of privilege, based on different types of intersecting identities. And gender and being neurodivergent might be just two of them. And this really is a finding that doesn't provide answers for now, but brings more questions, I would say, such as how do gender, neuroidentity, and career level influence these various aspects of researchers' experience that I exemplified here, for example. Of course, there are limitations in the data that was collected through this study. It seems that the sample contains 10% more women than the official initial figure. This is not worthy, although it's likely explained by the high percentage of early career researchers respondents, where also it was found to have a less balanced male to female ratio via official sources. And this might represent a respondent bias. For various reasons, early career researchers might have responded to our survey more compared to more senior researchers, for example. Although it is also possible that the number of early career researchers that are active contributors to AIMS2 trials in 2022 has increased since 2018. I think we all know how it works. You are a PhD student and you work on the AIMS2 trials data collection. Then maybe you move to another institution to become a postdoc, but then you remain active on the AIMS2 trials projects that you very hard contributed to. You write papers, you analyze the data. In the meantime, your XPI continues recruiting PhD students. So the number of early career researchers involved in any project might increase over time. The reverse might apply to more senior roles. Since 2018, some sites might have completed data collection, and so some PIs that maybe were part of AIMS2 trials might have thought they were not active contributors anymore. And also there were other events since 2018. Of course, we all know the pandemics, and in the UK also Brexit came into an effect. So we have all seen that many PIs have left, and this might also be a factor influencing why the data looks like this. I think we took some measures to try and minimize respondent bias when we started this study. It was made very clear both in the invitation and in the information that were attached to the survey that responses would be kept confidential, and upon submission they would be completely anonymized. Hopefully this has avoided that people who wouldn't feel otherwise safe to respond to the questions would have felt confident enough to provide their opinion. Also, the survey was piloted with an independent small group of researchers to whom we asked about the neutrality and the ambiguity of the language. We made changes in order to improve that so that people wouldn't be excluded on the basis of language. We also made sure through the piloting that the survey wouldn't take more than 15 minutes to complete. It actually took much less in all piloting sessions with a maximum of like 6 minutes. So it was also very quick to compile. The purpose of the survey was clearly explained in the email invitation and the information screen. The only limitation that I think we couldn't avoid is that there was limited circulation for this survey. We only circulated it via the AIMS2 trials internal newsletter. That, of course, potentially excluded people who don't check their email very much, or that were on annual leave on the dates of the different when the different reminders were sent out. So that's something that we had to accept in order to have a better control on who would access the survey and contribute to it, because if it was put for free on the internet and on social media, then anyone would have access to it. If we ended up with 600 responses that were anonymous, that data would have been unusable in all likeness, because there would have been no way of distinguishing between the actual AIMS2 trials contributors and everyone else who just completed because maybe read the instruction the wrong way. And now I will go to the conclusions. So just to summarize, approximately 4% of aims to trials researchers reported a formal diagnosis of autism, 4% and 15% were either undergoing the diagnostic process or thought they are or might be autistic. Also, there were other relevant demographics, with 19% declaring an autistic family member and 16% another neurodevelopmental condition. We also found that neurodivergent researchers were underrepresented in senior and clinical roles while overrepresented in early careers one. Of course, this association does not say why this is. It could be a potential disparity in career progression, but it might also be that neurodivergent researchers are climbing up the career ladder just now. I think we all noticed that there has been a change in openness and inclusiveness within our field. So it is possible that this field might not have been as neurodivergent friendly until a few years ago, and this only started more recently. So naturally, neurodivergent researcher will still be at early career research levels. There was also the significant relationship between being neurodivergent and highest odds ratio of having a mental health diagnosis. There was a notable intersection between gender and career level that invites us to also look at intersectionality in further developments of this work, not just done by me, but also other people. And while there is the potential limitation of this work not representing the entire network, I never thought it would, but I think it provides some useful insights into the characteristics of a very important demographic within our consortium, the early career researchers, who are still active contributors of it, because these are the people who have the potential to shape the future trajectory of what we are going to do. So whatever we found, even if it only applies to them, is still important to comment and reflect upon. Future directions, this is something that I started reflected upon only very recently, but I think it would be very interesting to maybe take a longitudinal approach to look at career progression in neurodivergent researchers, to not only try to understand the current status of how it is going, but what are the factors that influence success and challenges. Of course, this work could be extended with qualitative type of tools such as interviews. To do any type of intersectionality analysis, I think it's necessary to extend the sample size, and considering the anyway limits of aims to trials in dimension, I think the future is in also collect data from other research consortia, which also has the very good potential of looking at diverse locations and even global settings where relationships might be completely different. Also, I think as a quantitative researcher, it would be very interesting to look at the effect of having neurodivergent researchers in your team on research outcomes. For example, the quality and relevance of research that can be measured in many different ways, and also to assess the impact of educational initiatives. With regard to the findings of on mental health, I think this calls for try and make our environments the more supportive, as supportive as possible, just to highlight that yes, the odds ratio were higher in neurodivergent researchers, but they were also quite high in neurotypical people. So these measures tackling this would definitely benefit everyone. So definitely this could include training to reduce stigma, but also maybe offering counseling services and support groups. I think something in our field we are very good about is being flexible and work remotely. But then, of course, this can escalate into working all the time. So maybe also do a little reflection about that. Maybe also thanks to better mentorship and establish mechanism where people can seek support in a confidential way. So I'm just concluding here. We can also reflect on how to support the career development of neurodivergent individuals. Many sources would suggest that building community is essential, and also to design resources for career development that are made for neurodivergent researchers that would not necessarily benefit from general purpose resources that are made for the neurotypical majority. And then, of course, think this in terms of what are the specific needs of neurodivergent researchers at different career levels. We all know that the challenges of an early career researcher are different from those of a more senior researcher, even at the lecturer level. And then I think another thing I would reflect upon after this work and this presentation is how we can make the voices of neurodivergent researchers, I wrote here individuals, but I think I actually meant specifically neurodivergent researchers in decision-making processes. It's beneficial that there are so many among early career roles, but we know that their weight on decision-making is often limited. So maybe we can, people can reflect on how it would, if and how and when it would be possible that a perfect balance of neurodivergent and neurotypical researchers is also reached in leadership role. Clearly, Aims to Trials has demonstrated that this is possible for gender, so why not for neurodivergent researchers? And then I think it's very important to maybe build as a legacy of Aims to Trials. Of course, Aims to Trials is going to end in 1 year or so, to build collaborative initiatives that are going to last longer than Aims to Trials, starting with the Neurodivergent Researcher Network. This is something that with also other people within the network we have been trying to set up. Soon we are going to have news, hopefully, so stay tuned. And also maybe design training initiatives that may target researchers who potentially need training. So not just doing the training initiatives, among ourselves, but actually going out there at conferences and professional associations to people who might not have so easy access otherwise to neurodiversity training. And then maybe involve neurodivergent people into hiring committee to influence the people who directly influence people who contribute to all of it. So here I'm finished. Here is a link of the preprint of the paper of this work, which is currently under peer review. Feel free to read it. Just bear in mind that the final version is going to be quite different from this one, probably. And here are just some other interesting reads. And let me just conclude by thanking Professor Emily Jones and my colleague and friend, Georgia Lockwood-Astrin. They were the two people that collaborated with me more closely to make this project possible. And then here there is a probably incomplete list of people that have helped me, including the people who are part of the ethics working group that have discussed this with me.